The first signal, the stars outside the viewport of UES Nightborne looked calm, almost peaceful. For hours the crew had been going through quiet routine, scanning empty space, drinking coffee, and exchanging small jokes. But peace in space never lasted long, and they all knew it. Captain Elias Kane sat in the command chair, his sharp eyes fixed on the dark expanse. The Nightborne was a heavy warship, built for defense patrols, not for glory, but Kane had learned long ago that trouble never asked for permission before it came knocking. It started with a flicker on the comms panel. Lieutenant Harper frowned at her console, tapping the screen as static crackled through the bridge speakers. "Captain, I'm picking up something," she said quietly. At first it was just noise, a deep and broken hum. Then a voice cut through, alien and terrified. "They are burning us. Without warning. Please, help." The transmission ended. In a burst of screams and static, leaving only silence, the bridge crew froze. Kane leaned forward, his voice calm but cold. "Location?" Harper's fingers danced over the controls. "Colony world of Vestra 4, sir. 50 light minutes away." At full burn, Ensign Cole swallowed hard. "Vestra 4. That's a neutral world, no armies, no weapons." Kane stood slowly, the leather of his gloves creaking. "Not anymore," he said. "Helm. Plot a course, maximum thrust." The Nightborne's engines roared to life, the ship turning in a slow, deliberate arc toward the distant colony. In the crew quarters, pilots and gunners ran for their stations, pulling on armored vests and securing weapons. The red alert lights bathed the corridors in a bloody glow. Every step echoed with urgency. No one on the bridge spoke for several minutes. Each crew member was lost in thought, imagining what kind of enemy would burn civilians without even a demand for surrender. Finally, Kane broke the silence. They wanted someone to hear that message. They wanted fear to spread before the fire reached anyone else. Chief Gunnery Officer Darius shook his head. "Sir, our orders say not to interfere in local disputes unless humans are involved." Kane's eyes were like steel. "Do you see humans in that message?" "I saw people." "That's enough." Halfway to Vestra 4, the long-range sensors picked up a storm of energy readings. The display lit up with red icons ships, dozens of them hovering in orbit above the colony. The comms picked up new fragments, panicked voices, distant explosions, and the unmistakable roar of plasma fire. It was no simple raid, it was a purge. The attackers were not here to fight soldiers. They were here to erase a world. Harper's voice trembled as she identified the enemy. "It's the Vrax Dominion." "Sir, they don't negotiate." Everyone knew the name. The Vrax had no interest in diplomacy or prisoners. They struck without warning and left nothing but ash. It was said they burned entire planets not for strategy, but for pleasure. Nightborne's crew exchanged uneasy glances. A single human warship against an entire Dominion strike force was madness. But Kane's voice cut through the fear. "We are Terrans. We don't sit and watch while others burn." The order was given, and the Nightborne's weapon systems came online. The hum of power filling the air, missile bays unlocked, railguns charged, and point defense turrets rotated toward the unseen enemy. The journey felt longer than it was, every second stretching like an eternity. In the distance, Vestra 4 appeared, a pale blue-green world with white cloud swirls. But as they drew closer, the color began to change. The green turned to brown, then to black. Massive firestorms raged across the continents, their orange glow visible even from orbit. The sight made even the most hardened crew members clench their fists. Then, without warning, a bright flash lit up space. One of Vestra's cities had just been hit by a Dominion plasma lance. The shockwave rippled through the upper atmosphere, scattering clouds like paper. Another city followed, then another. Whole populations were gone in seconds. "Sir." "Incoming hail from the Dominion flagship," Harper said, her voice cold. Kane nodded. "Put it through." The screen filled with the image of a tall reptilian figure, its scaled face twisted into something that might have been a smile. Human. "Vessel," it hissed. "Leave this system." "This is not your concern." Kane stared for a long moment, his jaw tight. "My concern," he said slowly, "is that you're killing unarmed people." The alien leaned closer, its eyes narrow slits. "Of gold, they are weak." Weakness is erased. The connection cut without another word. The crew waited for their captain to speak. Instead, Kane walked to the center of the bridge and simply said, "Target their lead destroyers." The room went silent. They all knew what that meant. There would be no turning back. Nightborne was going to war, outside the viewport. The alien fleet glimmered like a wall of steel and fire. The humans had no reinforcements, no backup plan, and no treaty to protect them. All they had was their ship, their courage, and the stubborn belief that no one should burn without a fight. The engines flared, weapons locked, and the Nightborne moved in. Far below, on the burning surface of Vestra 4, survivors looked up at the sky. They saw a single silver shape cutting through the darkness, and for the first time that day, they felt hope. The enemy revealed. The UES Nightborne cut through space like a blade, its hull reflecting the distant fires of Vestra 4. The enemy fleet loomed ahead, dozens of sharp, jagged silhouettes hanging in orbit like vultures over a dying prey. Every Vrax warship was a dark spire of armor and weaponry, bristling with plasma, cannons and missile pods. They were not here to occupy. They were here to erase. On the bridge, the crew worked in tight silence, their hands moving quickly over controls. The hum of the engines was steady, but tension pressed on every chest. The forward screens flickered with images from the surface-burning cities, shattered towers, and rivers glowing with molten glass. In some feeds, alien civilians ran through smoke, only to vanish under sudden bursts of plasma fire. It was slaughter. Without hesitation, "Sir," Harper said, her voice tight, "I have confirmed identification on their flagship designation Bloodclaw." Captain Kane's eyes narrowed. He knew that name. The Bloodclaw was commanded by High Warlord Scarvin, a Vrax leader infamous for the destruction of entire moons. Where his ship appeared, life disappeared. The comms crackled again. This time an open channel from the colony's surviving council members. The voice was shaky, filled with desperation. "This is Vestra 4 Council. We are unarmed. We are a neutral colony. Please, whoever you are, help us." Kane glanced at Harper, and she nodded, confirming the signal was genuine. The captain took a breath, his voice steady. "This is Captain Elias Kane of the Terran vessel Nightborne. Hold your positions. We are on approach." A pause. Then the council replied, "They are burning every district, Captain. They don't even ask for surrender." The transmission ended in a sharp burst of static. On the sensor screens, the Dominion ships began to move. 2 destroyers broke formation, their engines flaring as they positioned themselves between the Nightborne and the planet. "Looks like they don't want us getting closer," Harper muttered. "Or," Darius replied grimly, "they don't want witnesses." Kane stood at the center of the bridge, hands behind his back. "Helm, maintain course," he said, his tone calm but unyielding. "Gunnery, target the forward weapons on those destroyers. Minimal yield, we're sending a message first." The Nightborne's railguns rotated into position, their massive barrels locking onto the Vrax ships ahead. A deep vibration ran through the hull as the guns powered up. The first shot left the barrels with a blinding flash. The projectile crossed the void in seconds, tearing through the port side. Cannon of the nearest destroyer. The enemy ship lurched sideways, sparks spraying into the darkness. A second shot followed, severing a missile rack before it could launch. The Vrax returned fire instantly, bright plasma bolts streaking toward the Nightborne. The ship shuddered under impact, shields flared blue, absorbing the worst of it. But the crew felt the jolt. In their bones, damage reports lit up along the side consoles. Nothing critical. But the message was clear. The Dominion was not going to let them pass without a fight. Kane's voice was sharp. "Open a direct channel to the Bloodclaw. Moment later, the main screen lit up with the face of High Warlord Scarvin. His scaled skin shimmered with a dark green hue, his golden eyes unblinking. Behind him, the bridge of the Bloodclaw burned with red light, Vrax warriors moving with disciplined precision. "Terran," Scarvin said, his voice like grinding. "Stone, you trespass in Vrax warspace. This is not warspace." Kane replied, "This is murder space." The Vrax warlord's lips curled into something like a grin. "They are weak, Captain. Weakness invites fire, and fire purifies." The line went dead before Kane could reply. The Bloodclaw began to move, slowly turning its massive bulk toward the Nightborne. Its weapons came online in perfect sequence, like a predator bearing. "Its teeth. They want us gone," Harper whispered, "and they're not going to ask twice." Kane's voice was steady. They had their chance to ask once. In the war room below decks, tactical officers worked over holomaps of the Vrax. Formation. Every ship was positioned to cut off escape routes, to trap any defenders that dared to resist. The Bloodclaw sat at the center, with heavy cruisers fanning out like claws. Nightborne was fast, but there was no slipping past them without a fight. Orders echoed through the ship damage control teams to stand by. Medical bays prepared for casualties, Marines ready for boarding action. The crew knew the odds. A human warship was fast, durable, and deadly. But they were one against many. Still, not one person asked for retreat. From the observation deck, Ensign Cole watched Vestra's burning horizon, the heat from the planets. Fires bled into the upper atmosphere, creating great rivers of smoke that spiraled into space. He could almost hear the screams in the silence between explosions. Somewhere down there were children who didn't know who the Vrax were. They only knew their homes were gone. On the bridge, Kane made his decision. "We break their line," he said. "We go straight for the Bloodclaw, take their head, and—" "Maybe the body stops moving," Darius grinned, "just slightly. Straight for the throat." "Very human of you, sir." The ship adjusted course, engines flaring bright. The destroyers ahead moved to block them again. But this time the Nightborne didn't slow. The human warship cut through the dark like a spear, and in the growing light of Vestra's flames, the Vrax fleet waited to see if the humans would dare. The first strike, the two Vrax destroyers closed in like wolves, guarding a wounded prey. Their engines glowed a deep, hungry red, their weapons charging with pulsing light. The space between the UES Nightborne and the planet Vestra 4 was now a killing ground, and both sides knew only one would pass through it alive. "Lock targets on both destroyers," Captain Kane ordered, his voice steady. Gunnery crews responded. Instantly, the railguns and missile tubes aligning in perfect formation. The ship's power shifted to the forward batteries, dimming the lights for just a second. It was the kind of moment every crewman felt in their bones, the breath before the punch. "Fire," Kane said. The first salvo tore through the void. Two heavy railgun rounds slammed into the lead destroyer, punching clean holes through its armor. Explosions flared from within, venting fire and debris into space. Before the Vrax could recover, the Nightborne's missile tubes spat a wave of guided warheads. Each one found a target, and the destroyer's forward section vanished in a cloud of shrapnel. The second destroyer reacted fast, swinging its hull to fire a broadside. Bright plasma beams cut across the Nightborne's shields, making them flare with a blinding blue light. The deck under the crew's feet trembled, and warning alarms screamed. Across the bridge, "Shields holding," Harper reported. "But they won't for long." Kane nodded. "Return the favor." The Nightborne surged forward, rotating slightly to bring its port railguns into line. A rapid triple volley smashed into the Vrax ship's reactor housing. The enemy vessel twisted away, fires spilling from its hull like blood from a wound. In seconds, it was dead in space, drifting aimlessly with its lights fading. But victory was short-lived. The Bloodclaw, massive and monstrous, had begun its advance. Its heavy cannons rotated toward the Nightborne, and a deep red glow built in their barrels. "Brace!" Kane shouted. The first volley from the flagship hit like a meteor strike. The Nightborne's shields flared and buckled, one panel shattering completely, leaving a gash in the outer hull. Down in engineering. Chief Ramos barked orders as sparks rained from the ceiling. Reroute power from aft thrusters to shields now. Crew members rushed between consoles, sealing off damaged sections and keeping the ship alive under the punishing assault. On the bridge, Kane studied the tactical display. The Bloodclaw was advancing slowly, relying on its heavy armor and overwhelming firepower. Behind it, more Dominion cruisers began to spread out, trying to flank the Nightborne. They wanted to surround the human ship and crush it like a trapped animal. "Helm, bring us in close," Kane ordered. Harper turned to him in disbelief. "Sir, closer means, it means their big guns can't track us fast enough," he cut in. The Nightborne roared forward, engines blazing. They dove under the firing arcs of the Bloodclaw's main cannons, slipping into the dangerous zone where speed and precision mattered more than size. At that range, the battle became brutal. Point defense guns rattled constantly, cutting down incoming missiles. The Nightborne's forward plasma lances lit up the Bloodclaw's hull, burning deep grooves into its black armor. Still, the Dominion flagship fought back hard, its secondary guns hammering the Nightborne's flanks. Secondary shield grid. Down on Deck 7. A voice called over comms, casualty reports coming in from Section Bravo. The bridge crew kept working, their hands steady even as the hull groaned under the strain. Kane's eyes never left the Bloodclaw's silhouette on the main screen. He knew one thing: take out the flagship, and the fleet might break. The Nightborne swung around in a tight arc, its rear railguns unleashing a surprise volley straight into the Bloodclaw's missile bays. One by one, the bays erupted in massive explosions, sending shockwaves across the enemy ship's surface. "Good hit," Darius shouted. "We've crippled their long-range ordnance." Kane didn't smile, but his voice was firm. "Then let's go for the throat." Suddenly, alarms blared again. A Dominion cruiser had broken through from the flank, firing plasma torpedoes at near point-blank range. The Nightborne rolled hard to avoid them, but one torpedo clipped the starboard side. The explosion tore a deep scar along the hull, and internal fires broke out instantly. Emergency teams rushed in, sealing blast doors and venting flames into space. Through the chaos, Kane kept his focus. "Target that cruiser, all guns." The response was swift, and merciless railguns, plasma lances, and autocannons all fired at once. The cruiser shattered under the assault, breaking apart into 3 burning sections that drifted into the void. But the fight was far from over. The Bloodclaw's engines surged, and its massive shadow fell over the Nightborne. The two ships were now locked in a deadly dance, exchanging fire at point-blank range. Each hit shook the deck. Each explosion sent a ripple of light across the void. It was no longer a battle of tactics, it was a test of who would break first. Kane's voice cut through the roar of the fight. "Helm, bring us in under their command tower." The Nightborne dove low, skinning the Bloodclaw's lower hull. Gunnery crews aimed for weak points in the armor reactor conduits, sensor arrays, weapon control nodes. Every shot that landed made the massive warship shudder. On the surface of Vestra 4, survivors looked up through smoke-filled skies. They saw 2 titans of war locked in battle above them. One was the monster that had burned their cities. The other was the silver blade cutting through the darkness. The battle had only begun, but already the legend of the Nightborne was being written in fire and steel. Into the fire, the Bloodclaw reeled from the Nightborne's last volley, but its massive bulk still blocked the path to Vestra 4. Captain Kane knew they couldn't waste time trading fire forever. Every minute they stayed locked in orbit meant more civilians were burning on the surface below. "Helm," he said, his tone like cold steel. "Take us into the atmosphere." The bridge crew froze for half a second. No one wanted to dive a heavy warship into an active war zone under planetary bombardment. But they didn't question the order. The Nightborne's engines flared, and the ship angled downward toward the planet's glowing horizon, plasma bolts. From the Bloodclaw chased them as they descended, slicing through the upper atmosphere, shields lit up with bright blue arcs, heat alarms blaring as the ship began to push through the friction of re-entry. Flames licked across the hull, and the entire ship groaned as it cut through clouds thick with ash and smoke. The crew could see it now. Vestra's cities were nothing but skeletal ruins surrounded by raging firestorms. The Dominion had left no safe zone. Whole districts were carpeted with burning wreckage, and strange alien aircraft prowled low over the streets, hunting survivors, picking up life signs, multiple clusters, Harper reported, her voice shaky. Coordinates marked, Kane replied. The Nightborne swept over the largest burning city, and the crew's hearts sank. Down there, groups of terrified aliens huddled in basements and shattered buildings. Some ran into the streets waving brightly colored cloths, desperate for rescue. Others lay still, trapped under fallen debris. Kane opened a ship-wide channel. All rescue teams, stand by for rapid deployment. Drop bays opening in 60 seconds. In the hangars, armored Marines readied their rifles and survival gear. Medical crews secured stretchers and emergency medkits. Dropships waited with their engines hot, eager to launch the moment the bays opened. The Nightborne's point defense turrets roared to life, swatting down incoming Dominion strike craft. Every few seconds, a red targeting warning flashed across the bridge as enemy gunners tried to lock on to the descending warship. "Keep us moving," Kane ordered. "Don't give them a clean shot." The ship weaved through towers of smoke, her massive frame somehow dancing between collapsing buildings and burning debris. Then came the first real hit. A plasma lance from an enemy ground battery struck the Nightborne's starboard side. The shields absorbed most of it, but the shock threw several crew members against their consoles. Starboard armor holding. Darius called out, "But we can't take too many of those." Kane didn't flinch. "Find that battery and silence it." Seconds later, a railgun round from the Nightborne tore the enemy emplacement apart, the explosion scattering molten metal across the streets. "Dropships away," Harper confirmed. From the belly of the Nightborne, small, fast craft shot toward the surface, weaving through falling debris. On the ground, Marines leapt out the moment they landed, pushing through heat and smoke to reach trapped civilians. Some carried alien children in their arms, shielding them from falling embers. Others dragged the wounded toward the waiting ships, ignoring the danger overhead. In one sector, Sergeant Cole's team found a collapsed shelter. Dozens of civilians were trapped inside, the air growing hot and thin. The Marines used cutting torches to break through the debris. As the first survivors stumbled out, a Dominion fighter screamed overhead, spitting fire into the street. Cole swung his shoulder launcher and fired. One shot, one kill. The fighter erupted into a ball of fire before crashing into a nearby plaza. From above, the Nightborne provided constant cover fire. Plasma lances carved through enemy formations, while railguns reduced Vrax troop carriers to twisted wreckage. The ship's guns didn't stop for a second. Every round they fired bought another few seconds for the rescue teams to work. But the Dominion wasn't giving up. Two Vrax gunships broke through the Nightborne's defenses, diving toward the largest group of evacuees. Before they could fire, the Nightborne rotated hard and unleashed a full missile barrage. The sky lit up with twin explosions, raining debris down over the burning city. Inside the rescue bays, the first wave of survivors was rushed aboard. Medical crews worked frantically, treating burns, broken bones, and smoke inhalation. Some of the rescued clutched at the humans' hands, speaking words no one could understand. But they didn't have the gratitude needed. No translation. Kane stood at the viewport, watching as more dropships returned with survivors. But his jaw tightened. This wasn't enough. For every life they saved, dozens more were still trapped. And time was running out, Captain, Harper warned. Vrax reinforcements incoming. 5 more warships entering the upper atmosphere. The bridge went silent. Fighting the Bloodclaw had been one thing. but fighting 5 more warships in low atmosphere while protecting civilians was suicide. Kane turned to his crew. Then we move faster, he said. Evacuate as many as we can, and when those ships arrive, we'll make sure they wish they never followed us down here. The Nightborne roared low over the city one last time, its shadow passing over those still on the ground. To the survivors, it looked like a silver guardian cutting through the smoke. To the Vracs, it was a threat they could no longer ignore. The real battle was about to begin on the ground and in the skies above Vestra, the turning point. The Nightborne's hangar bays were a storm of movement. Rescue dropships came and went, unloading injured civilians and taking off again before the landing pads cooled. But the Vracs' reinforcements were closing in fast. In the thick smoke above Vestra 4, the distant glow of 5 enemy warships could already be seen on the bridge. Harper's voice was sharp. Captain, we've intercepted encrypted Vracs comms. There's something big in the city's old capital tower. Kane leaned forward. Weapons? Worse, she said, her face pale. It's their planetary control node. Every artillery strike, every orbital bombardment, every drone attack is being coordinated from there. Darius growled. Take that out, and their attack falls. Apart, Kane nodded. Then we're taking it out. Prepare a strike team. Minutes later, a squad of Marines loaded into 2 fast dropships. Sergeant Cole led the team, his visor reflecting the red glow of the burning city. The Capitol Tower had once been a proud spire of glass and steel, but now it was half collapsed. Vracs banners hung from its sides, and armored soldiers patrolled the base. At its center, shielded by layers of alien tech, pulsed the control node, glowing like a heart feeding fire into the planet. The dropships came in low, weaving through the smoke. Nightborne's guns opened up above them, pounding Vracs' ground forces and clearing a path. Cole's boots hit the ground hard, and his squad fanned out. Blaster fire lit up the rubble, the sharp crack of Terran rifles answering the alien plasma bolts. Push forward, Cole shouted, cutting down a Vracs trooper that burst from cover. Inside the tower's base, the air was thick with heat and dust. The Marines moved quickly, clearing room after room. Every second mattered. Once the reinforcements arrived, the node would be impossible to reach. Up ahead, through a shattered doorway, they saw it, the Vracs control node. It was a swirling mass of energy and machinery, alien symbols crawling across its surface like living light. Charges set here, here, and here, Cole ordered, pointing to the support struts. Corporal Mason knelt beside the core, planting a high-yield explosive. The node's hum grew louder, as if it sensed its danger. Suddenly, a blast door slammed shut behind them. From the shadows stepped a Vracs officer in heavy crimson armor, flanked by a squad of elite guards. You think you can break the Dominion's will, human? The officer hissed. Cole raised his rifle. Not your will, your toys. The fight exploded in an instant. Bolts of plasma seared the air. Bullets sparked off alien armor. The Marines fought in tight formation, pushing forward inch by inch, until the last Vrac soldier hit the ground. Mason slammed the last detonator into place. Charges on. 3 minutes until detonation. Move! Cole shouted, and they sprinted out into the smoke-filled street. Behind them, the tower began to shudder as the explosives ticked down from the sky. The Nightborne swooped low, its side hatches opening to pull the Marines aboard. As soon as they were inside, Kane gave the order, pull up full power. The Nightborne surged upward just as the Capitol Tower erupted in a massive fireball. The shockwave rolled through the city, flattening walls and shattering windows. The burning wreckage of the tower collapsed inward, burying the last of the Vrac's artillery control systems. Captain, Harper said, scanning her console. Their bombardment patterns are breaking apart. Enemy coordination is collapsing. Kane didn't smile, but the weight in his voice lightened. Good, now we turn this fight around. But there was no time to rest. The 5 Vracs warships were now entering low orbit. Through the haze above, their jagged shapes became visible. weapons glowing hot. "They'll be in firing range in 60 seconds, Darius warned. Kane gave the order without hesitation. "Target the lead ship, hit them before they hit us." The Nightborne's railguns and plasma lances roared. The first volley struck the incoming warship square on the bow, ripping through its shields and scattering molten debris into space. The enemy returned fire immediately, plasma bolts slamming into the Nightborne's forward hull. Damage alarms blared, and the bridge lights flickered, but the crew held their ground. Below, on Vestra's surface, the fighting had shifted. Without their orbital support, Vrak's ground forces were disorganized. Survivors began moving toward evacuation points in greater numbers. For the first time, there was a real chance of saving. "Thousands instead of hundreds, Captain," Harper said urgently. "We've got a comms request from the Bloodclaw." Kane's eyes narrowed. On screen, the massive scaled face of High Warlord Scarvin appeared, his expression darker than before. "You have cost me a clean victory, human," the Warlord growled. "But you will not leave this world alive." Kane leaned forward slightly, his voice low. "We'll see about that." The Bloodclaw began to move, its engines blazing. The Dominion's reinforcements adjusted course to join it, forming a wall of firepower. It was clear this would be the final push. Nightborne had crippled their command structure, but now it would have to survive the full weight of the Vrak's fleet. In the hangars, Marines strapped in and pilots sealed their helmets. In engineering, Ramos rerouted every spare unit of power to the shields and weapons. The entire ship was ready for the storm that was about to hit. Kane stood at the center of the bridge, the flames of Vestra reflecting in his eyes. He knew that if they broke here, everything they had done would be for nothing. He also knew the Vraks expected them to run. Instead, he pointed at the Bloodclaw's glowing command tower and gave the only order his crew wanted to hear: "Take us straight to them." The Nightborne's engines roared. The human warship surged forward into the teeth of the Vrak's fleet, and every soul aboard braced for the fight that would decide whether Vestra lived or died. Nightborne's last stand, the void above Vestra 4, was now a furnace of fire and metal. The Bloodclaw led the charge, its massive hull blotting out the light as it bore down on the Nightborne. Behind it, the 5 newly arrived Vrak's warships spread into a deadly formation, weapons glowing with lethal heat. The air on the bridge of the Nightborne was tense, every crew member locked into their station, hands ready, eyes sharp. "Enemy fleet in full weapons range in 20 seconds, Harper reported. Kane's voice was calm, but it carried the weight of finality. "Darius, I want every gun hot. Ramos, hold those shields even if it kills the reactors." "Aye, sir," both men replied without hesitation. The first volley came like a meteor storm. Plasma bolts and missile trails streaked toward the Nightborne. The ship's shields flared brilliant blue under the impact, each strike shaking the hull like a hammer blow. "Shields at 87%, shouted the defense officer. Kane didn't flinch. "Return fire center on the Bloodclaw." The Nightborne's railguns roared, hurling tungsten rounds at impossible speeds. They slammed into the Bloodclaw's forward plating, punching through the first layer of armor. Explosions blossomed along the alien flagship's hull. But the Vrak ship kept coming, its heavy cannons still locked on target. The smaller Dominion cruisers began to swing wide, trying to flank the Nightborne. "Helm, rotate starboard, give port batteries clear lines," Kane ordered. The human ship rolled gracefully despite her size, bringing fresh guns to bear. 2 cruisers took the brunt of the sudden assault, their hulls torn apart in seconds. One exploded in a fiery cloud, scattering fragments across the battlefield. But the Bloodclaw was relentless. It fired its main lance, a blinding column of red energy that tore across the Nightborne's shields. The deck lurched violently, consoles sparking, and a section of the bridge ceiling collapsed. Forward shields down to 53%. Harper called out, "Hold it together." Kane growled, "We're not done yet." Down in engineering, Ramos and his team worked in chaos. Pipes burst, coolant flooded the floor, and the reactor groaned under the strain. "Reroute power from the aft thrusters." Ramos barked, "We'll burn the engines out if we have to, but those shields stay up." The Bloodclaw's escort ships pressed closer, filling space with a deadly web of plasma fire. The Nightborne's point defense turrets chattered constantly, cutting down incoming missiles, but still, some slipped through, detonating against the armor with bone-rattling force. Sections of the hull began to glow red-hot from the heat. "Captain, multiple boarding craft inbound." Darius warned, "They're trying to latch onto Deck 6. Kane didn't hesitate. "Seal the bulkheads, vent the approach corridors, and send a Marine squad to finish the rest." The bridge screens briefly showed Vrak's warriors being sucked into the void before cutting back to the main battle. Then came the moment Kane had been waiting for. The Bloodclaw's movement slowed, just slightly. As it tried to adjust its firing arc, Kane leaned forward. "Helm. All power to forward thrust Darius. Give me everything we have on their starboard engine cluster." The Nightborne surged ahead, skimming dangerously close to the Bloodclaw's side. Her guns fired in a rapid, unrelenting stream. Round after round tore into the flagship's engine array. Flames and plasma bursts erupted from its rear, the great ship lurching as control faltered. Direct hit. Harper shouted, "They've lost 20% thrust." But the celebration was short-lived. Two enemy cruisers broke from formation and charged the Nightborne head-on. Their ramming prows glowed red as they prepared to smash into the human warship. "Helm, hard roll," Kane ordered. The Nightborne twisted violently, missing the first cruiser by meters. The second clipped her port side, ripping a gash in the armor and sending shockwaves through the ship. Hull breach alarms screamed, but damage control teams were already sealing the wound. Through the chaos, Kane kept his eyes on the Bloodclaw. "We end this now," he said. "Bring us under their command tower point-blank range." The Nightborne dove low beneath the enemy flagship, so close now that the alien armor filled the entire forward viewport. At this range, there was no finesse. Every gun fired, every missile launched, every lance burned into the enemy's exposed underbelly. The Bloodclaw shuddered violently, its lights flickering. Then one massive explosion ripped through its spine, sending debris spinning into the void. "They're breaking," Harper cried. The smaller Vrak ships hesitated, their formation crumbling. Some began to retreat. Others fired wildly, desperate to cover their escape. But the Nightborne was bleeding too. The hull was scarred and pitted, shields nearly gone, weapons overheating. Still, the crew pressed forward, pushing the enemy farther from the planet. Finally, with one last thunderous volley, the Bloodclaw's command tower erupted in a fiery bloom. The great flagship began to tilt, its engines sputtering before it finally drifted, dead in space. A deep silence fell over the battlefield, broken only by the crackle of burning wreckage. On Vestra's surface, the surviving civilians looked to the sky. The fiery rain of enemy debris told them the impossible had happened. One Terran warship had stood against the Dominion's might and survived. Kane stood on the bridge, battered but unbroken. "Status?" he asked, his voice quiet. Harper exhaled. "Bloodclaw destroyed. Enemy retreating. Vestra is clear." For a moment, no one spoke. Then the crew began to cheer, not for themselves, but for the lives they had saved. But Kane's gaze was already on the stars beyond. The Vraks would not forget this, and the war was far from over. The message to the galaxy, the battlefield above Vestra 4 was quiet now. The silence felt strange after hours of roaring engines, shattering explosions, and constant weapon fire. The great Vrak's flagship Bloodclaw was gone, reduced to drifting shards of twisted metal. The Dominion's remaining ships had fled into the darkness, leaving only the Nightborne suspended over the wounded planet. On the bridge, the air was heavy with exhaustion. Some crew members leaned back in their seats, heads lowered. Others still worked their stations, running damage reports and coordinating rescue operations. Kane stood in the center, his eyes scanning the tactical displays. "Harper," he said, "get me a status update on the surface." She tapped her console. "Captain, evacuation zones are secure. Vrak's ground forces are either retreating or destroyed. Medical crews are pulling survivors from the ruins." Kane gave a single nod. "Keep the dropships running until there's no one left down there." The view outside was sobering. From orbit, Vestra's surface was scarred with wide black burns, like open wounds across a living world. Fires still burned in places, casting a faint orange glow even from space. But among the ruins, life was moving again. Small groups of survivors gathered in the cleared streets, looking up at the silver warship above them. Down in the Nightborne's hangar bays, the rescued came in wave after wave. Medical crews worked tirelessly, tending to burns, injuries, and shock. Some survivors clutched their children close, refusing to let go even for treatment. Others simply stared in silence, still unable to believe they were alive. The alien council leader approached Kane on the hangar floor. "You did not have to come," she said, her voice trembling. "But you did, and you stayed," Kane simply replied. "We don't leave. People to burn." News of the battle traveled faster than the wreckage could cool. Within hours, Allied channels lit up with encrypted transmissions. Merchant fleets, neutral colonies, and even distant governments repeated the same headline. One Terran warship stood against the Dominion and won. The story spread far beyond friendly space. In the hidden halls of resistance cells, alien leaders whispered the name Nightborne like a rallying cry. Even among the Dominion's enemies, the tale became proof that the Vraks were not untouchable. And in Vrak's territory, the story was told in anger to them. The Nightborne was a wound to their pride, a reminder that humans were more dangerous than they had believed. On the bridge, Darius leaned against the tactical console. "You know, sir, after this, the Vraks will be hunting us." Kane didn't argue. "They'll come," he said, "and we'll be ready." Harper turned from her station. "Captain, we've got a long-range comms request from Earth Command. They want a full report and confirmation of the Bloodclaw's destruction." Kane's gaze lingered on the ruined horizon of Vestra. "Send it," he said, "and make sure they know." This wasn't just a victory, it was a warning. In engineering, Ramos walked the damaged decks with his crew. The hull was pitted and scorched, armor plates half melted, power relays fried. But the Nightborne was alive. She had taken the worst. The Dominion could throw and was still standing. Some crew members patted the walls as they passed, a quiet thanks to the ship that had carried them through hell. When the final evacuee was aboard, Kane gave the order to break orbit. The Nightborne rose slowly, leaving Vestra's skies behind in the city streets. The survivors watched her climb higher until she was only a glint in the distance. They knew they might never see the humans again, but they would remember the silver warship that came out of the dark and saved them when no one else would. Back in deep space, the ship's course shifted toward Terran territory. The crew moved with the slow rhythm of recovery, patching damage, running diagnostics, and sharing quiet meals in the mess. But the peace didn't last long. A soft tone from Harper's console drew her attention. "Captain," she said slowly, "we're receiving a signal unknown origin, heavily encrypted." Kane stepped beside her. "Can you break it?" "Working on it now," she replied, fingers flying over the controls. The signal cracked open, revealing a single audio transmission. It was a voice calm, deliberate, and alien. "Terran warship Nightborne, we have seen what you have done. The Vraks will not stop, and neither will we. Prepare yourselves." The message ended, leaving only static. Darius leaned closer, frowning. "Friends or enemies?" Kane stared at the dark beyond the viewport. "Too soon to tell," he said, "but either way, the galaxy just got a lot smaller." Outside, the stars stretched endlessly. Somewhere out there, the Vraks were gathering their strength. Somewhere else, others were deciding whether to stand with the humans or against them. And in the middle of it all, the Nightborne sailed on, scarred, battered, but unbroken, carrying her crew into whatever came next. For Kane, it wasn't just about Vestra anymore. It was about every world that might burn if no one stood in the way. And as long as the Nightborne had power in her engines and fight in her crew, there would always be someone to stand.